Hello! We are going to demonstrate today how to use pastels with water. You are going to need different pastel colors, soft pastel colors, the ones that are dusty, yeah? The brand I'm using is Jackson's Art because they are non-toxic. You can also find other soft pastels that are a little bit more expensive usually, and they are done with heavy metals, I think, and they are cobalt colors or cadmium colors. They are toxic, so if you are drawing with those, don't eat, yeah? Don't lick the pastels, of course. Don't have coffee, or if you have coffee, make sure that you don't have any dust on your coffee, okay? Just in case you get some sort of uneasiness or stomachache or something. So the image I demonstrated in the last class was this one, okay? And the final result for it was this. Okay, it's not going to look the same, but I'm going to demonstrate the same process. Okay, so tools we are going to need is a charcoal to sketch, it's willow charcoal to sketch, a brush and water. So I'm using a big brush, yeah, and just water. I have water in here. You can use a hairdryer if you want to use or speed up the process. I think that's it. Then we are going to normally, when I work just with pastels, in many cases I use charcoal, willow charcoal, as the primary stage of my drawing. However, for this I'm going to just sketch with a line to know where all the elements of my photographs are going, yeah? And as soon as I know where everything is happening in my drawing, I'm going to move on into the applying of color. I'm going to also put this on the group, so you have access to it if you want to work from this one. These are the 3 images I propose. They are all from Pinterest, I think. Very good source of images. Okay, so I'm going to use that as a reference, yeah? Remember to use, you see, you can just do a line like this to more or less know where you are, and that frame will help you to keep things and then control size wise. In this particular case, because it's a landscape, it doesn't really matter, but if you were doing a figure using this technique, in my case I struggle fitting the figure within the space of the paper, so I need to limit myself beforehand, and that way I make sure that everything happens inside my margins. If I don't do that, what it normally happens is my drawing gets cut from the top or the bottom. Has to be a quick drawing, don't do it too elaborate, because we're going to just keep evolving and adapting the drawing later on with the color. Also remember, you can maybe readjust the proportions or the format of the paper. So if you like just this and you would like to keep a format that is square, do that, yeah? Here there is something that I've seen doing. So this mountain here is very dark, but that mountain, although it's very dark, is farther behind. If we make it very dark on the drawing, what is going to happen is going to make this come forward, and we don't want that. We want the most of the contrasts happening on this area, yes? So we have a first, second, a third stage on the drawing. If we don't do that, that will come and it will compete and try to steal attention from this area here, yeah? Now I have my drawing done. I'm going to start blocking, yeah? So I have prepared a few colors here. I'm going to use that, a little bit of that. I'm not sure if I'm going to use them all or if I want to put more later on, but this is the basic stuff I'm going to start the drawing with. And of course some pinky color, I like pink a lot. Maybe some bright green as well, yeah? So if you don't have those, they don't have to be the same. I will personally prefer to limit the palette. So if I use too many colors, it's going to become very realistic, and I don't want that. If it's the first time you try this technique, allow yourself to play, make mistakes, embrace them, and learn from them. It's nice to have a struggle, and I personally believe that you need a struggle in every single piece you do without suffering too much, but that struggle will make you grow better every time you do a piece. Okay, I'm going to put that aside now. So I'm going to start just blocking, and of course I'm going to use pale blues that I think I'll pick there, and a light pastel. I don't know if it's a pale grey or a white. Yeah, I think a pale grey on the sky. The colors you use on the sky, try to avoid using them anywhere else. Yeah, or if you use them just as a hint. If you use the same colors on top and bottom of the picture, everything is going to become the same. Although I'm blocking and I'm planning to use water, I'm blocking with the colors I'm going to use later on, and more or less adding more than just one color, so the pigment mixes when I use the color on top. You can use the stroke, yeah, to define the planes of the picture happening on the drawing, yeah. So if you want the mountain to have a hill, you can just do the strokes like this, yeah. If you want it flat, you can keep the strokes like this, and that helps to create that sensation. You can also mix colors. When we use the water, the two pigments, these become pigment basically, which is what they are. They will mix, yeah. So all the extra color you add in there, you take into account that everything is going to mix in there. It's going to create a new color. It's not as because when you do it like this, the color you put later is going to dramatically cover the color you have underneath. But when you use color, they both are going to mix. So I'm going to just use water, yes? You can use different brushes if you find that the color is getting very muddy, or whenever you go, for example, if I want to make this color first, I will do that because I want to keep this brightness. If I go with the brush in here and then go with the same brush without cleaning it in here, of course the colors are going to mix and that brightness is going to disappear. Remember, when you want to make things very bright, you need to do so when we're using the white underneath or the paper underneath. So if we want a very, very, very bright yellow, try to use that yellow on top of white paper. Or if you are painting or with acrylic, imagine, you might need to recover that area if it's not white anymore with a white first before you do the yellow on top. So that way you will keep the brightest of the colors. You don't need to use a lot of water. You see, the water is sitting a little bit on top of the layer of pastel, yeah? And it behaves very similar to the way that watercolors do. So the colors are mixing them, you see? Now I'm going to clean my brush, piece of cloth if necessary, or a piece of kitchen towel. And as soon as I see it getting very muddy, I clean the brush, yeah? It doesn't matter if it looks like a mess now, yeah? Remember, we're going to carry on working with pastels on top. Now, the first, what I believe works best is to let it dry and then add the next layer on top, yeah? If you don't wait for it to dry, what is going to happen, the pastel is going to sink and get very softened by the water, and it's going to get, you're going to get a lot of material in a particular area that might not be necessary. So it's better to keep building up little by little. You can still work with water in the next layer or so, or even more if you feel you have to, but you need to allow the paper to dry between the stages. Also, the paper I'm using is cartridge paper, yeah? It's not very thick, this one. You could use, it would be ideal if I was using something slightly thicker, but it doesn't really matter because I'm not using a lot of water and I'm going to dry this very quickly. If you want, you can also use watercolor paper. So here there's a proof I did the other day. So on watercolor paper, of course, the water is handled better by the strength of the paper. The only thing is the texture, you see, you can see the texture still. You don't completely get rid of it. You see in this one, that one is dry from the other day. So I personally don't mind that, I actually like it, but if you don't want that, you can find cartridge paper that is a lot thicker. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dry this up with a hair dryer. I'm going to stop the video and then start again, yeah? See you in a bit. Okay, now my paper is dry. It took me a little bit of time because I had a pool of water in there. So just take the time you need, yeah? So I'm going to just keep my reference nearby, yeah? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start reaching this area here and starting pushing things back and moving things forward by using the contrast. So you want to bring things forward, remember you need brighter colors, more contrast, more interest areas, maybe the use of line, yeah, amount of detail. If you want to push things backward, you need to keep the colors duller, boring, less contrast, less detail, less definition. Don't make the edge as clear cut as it is in here. Make the edge slightly softer on your drawing, yeah, and even softer on the mountain behind, so you keep a clear sensation of distances in there, yeah. So I'm just readjusting things in there. Of course, because it's dry, I can now use the pastel as usual, and the pastel will cover as it normally does, yeah? When I don't want to use the water anymore, whenever I want to build up and I feel that the pastel is not able to keep adding itself to the paper, that means we need to fix it. I'm going to make the sky pretty boring, so I don't want to avoid to have too much texture. If you feel that you don't need to add another layer of water, that's also fine. But keep it, if it's the first time you do it, keep it experimental. This looks very dark, this area here on the picture. Try to avoid using black. Make that darkness, that shadow area, rich enough to create an interest area. So you still need to keep the contrast, but if you make it too flat, it's going to be too striky, too simple as well, and it's going to become more abstract, unless you want that abstract effect happening, yeah? Because we all have different ways of doing things, so everything is valid. I need more oranges in here. I personally use a lot complementary colors because I like the contrast between the blues and the oranges and the pinks and the greens. Can also blend, yeah. I'm still unsure if I'm going to use water. I'm going to decide that later. But remember, you can add as many layers as you want to. Well, no, maybe 2 layers of water. You can work with water further. Now when I want to use a dark color, in here I'm going to create contrast between the mountain behind, yeah? And that contrast between that and the light in there is going to help me to bring this forward. I'm going to use willow charcoal for that because it's not as aggressive as using a black pastel. So what I'm going to do is try with the willow charcoal. If that is not enough, I'm going to start using compressed charcoal. But I'm not going to use a black pastel because black pastel is a lot more dramatic. To leave that in here so you can see that is enough, which I think so far it is. I'm going to do anything else too, and I'm going to keep that. Then in here this is compressed charcoal, it's not black pastel. I'm using it on the side because I don't want a lot of detail in there, yeah? I want to keep everything as flat as possible and boring enough. It's important that you step away from your picture, yeah? So you can see how it's looking from the distance. In my case I cannot do it because I have my camera in the front, hello, but you can, yeah? What I also do, I use pastel pencils. They have a lot more binder because they want the tip to last for longer, because if you use this mixture of pigment and binder in a pastel pencil, that won't last long. So they use a lot of binder in here, that's why they are harder. So sometimes I use them for blending or as a blending tool rather than using a blender. And particularly for small areas they are really good because the tool is, you see, it's the tip of the pencil is quite fine. Step away a little bit or squint your eyes if you can step away from it. And this dark is not black pastel, is with compressed charcoal. If you hear a squeaky noise, that's my daughter Sophia. In order to bring this area even more to the foreground, I need to be making the strikes and strokes and marks slightly bolder. The distance. I think I'm going to use water as well, and again in here. You sometimes can feel the water is not able to sit properly on top of the pastel, so just keep insisting a little bit until the pastel gets soaked, because otherwise it just gets a little bit muddy and you won't be able to actually move the pastel around as if it was a watercolor. You need to let it soak the water and absorb the water. I like these marks, so I'm going to leave them like that. So now I'm going to try and show you what happens if you use the pastels on top of a moist area. See? So you can see the pastel is moving a lot more difficult, it has more difficulty to move, and most of the pigment gets stuck in there. Sometimes the water surrounds the pigment and creates like a halo around the actual pastel. You can see there. Where am I? There. You can see how the borders are slightly darker because they are being absorbed, they're absorbing the water. Same effect happens when you use pastels on oils. Sometimes the oil starts being absorbed by the pastel and you get like a darker edge around the pastel mark, which I personally like, but not everyone has to like the same things. I need to get some new orange. Again, compressed charcoal. No, that's actually a green. Is it? Yep. There was compressed charcoal. Hola, blue. If you are working in here where the strokes have to be more dramatic, just wait for the paper to dry. If you go too harsh on this paper, in this particular paper, cartridge paper, with the pastels on top, you might end up having a hole. So just be patient, have a cup of tea. First you wash your hands, have a cup of tea, or use the hairdryer. And I'm going to use this area, and I'm going to use the hairdryer in that area. Okay. Towards like that, we have to create a bit more contrast between that mountain and the front mountain. Remember, you can still mix the pastels as usually when the paper is completely dry, so you can just put a layer of color and then just allow the pastel on top to mix by insisting a little bit more. If you just use one stroke, you see, the color stays quite clean, but if you use less pressure and you just rub a little bit, the color on top is affected by the color underneath. So you can use both techniques, yeah? You can also use the movement or the angle of the strokes to suggest the inclination of the mountain, how steep it is, if there is something else happening in there. So by using curvy lines and angled lines, I can suggest a lot more than just using one kind of stroke. Normally, I would suggest everyone to try the same picture a few times so you can get familiarized with it and find the strengths or the weaknesses of the image, how would you like it to be, the format of it, whether something works or it doesn't, because the first time you try something, remember you are experimenting, you don't know if whatever you think is going to work is actually going to work, and just keep insisting. Keep trying. Now more than ever you are at home, so you can experiment a lot more and you don't have to rush to go somewhere else. Or at least you should have a little more time because you're not commuting. But if you didn't used to commute, maybe you were going somewhere, so the travel time is not there anymore. So give yourself some time to experiment, to play, to make mistakes, to embrace them and learn from them. Mistakes are a lot more important than doing things right the first time, because you don't learn that way. You will forget what happened. It will be pure luck. It's the struggle what really teaches you. Also remember, you don't always need to copy everything that happens on the picture. You can make modifications, make the image your own interpretation of it, so that you don't have to add every single thing that happens in there, in here, in there, yeah? It's a lot more interesting to see what you have in your head. And again, particularly if you are learning, if you are experimenting with this technique for the first time. And I think you will always keep learning. I do. I'm going to fix it. Remember, when you fix things, you need to keep the paper vertical and keep at least 20 centimeters away from the paper. If it's the first time you spray, just keep farther and get closer as you see how strong the stream of fixative is. Because if you get too close, you will have a big mark of the fixative on the paper, and that's going to be difficult to correct. Yeah, so it's better to start from farther distance and then get closer until you see the fixative getting at the paper in an even way. Yeah, so keep the paper vertical. Do this outside, yeah, if you can, or in an area with a window open or a place where you can have air coming in and out, because it's quite toxic as well. Yeah, it's not ideal you breathing. It smells very nice, but it's not good for you. Yeah, so I'm going to fix it.